Hello, hello. It is your Astro Coach Sarah here, and I just recently posted a video, a rough history of blindness and astrology. Recording them all on the same day, but posting them differently. So I wanted to give a little um, just like what I've noticed in doing astrology with various clients. So I'm going to do this video about what I've noticed with my blind and visually impaired clients. I'm going to do a separate video on Mercury and a very informal study that I did about Mercury and autism and ADHD. So that'll be a separate video. So look forward to that one. But for this one, let me talk about some things I've noticed with blind clients. Um, I'm not going to show any charts because A, I don't have any prepared that I wouldn't show people's names, and I'm not going to do that to my clients. So, but let me just tell you what I have noticed just in looking at different charts. So I'm constantly looking for like the thread, right? Like what's the thread astrologically that all of us are blind and visually impaired, right? If I really wanted to, I really would love to do like a down the rabbit hole study of like those of us who ended up at residential blind schools, because is there a past life connection there? Because it's a bunch of random people, and many of us, some of us like stayed connected over the years and whatnot. But this is related to like blindness specifically. So when I have worked with astrologers as my own mentors, and I've worked with spiritual mentor, um, I can tell you that like they notice that I have like a vision beyond my vision, meaning like third eye vision, meaning that like my wisdom is greater than this earthly place. And so basically, like, there's stuff that I foresaw happening that's currently happening. And there's, I foresee a utopian or dystopian world? Neither, because I think it's up to us which timeline we choose to be on, which part of the world but I mean, I think that's not just futuristically. I think that's currently, like, there's people that are currently thriving in life, right? They live in a world of abundance. They live at, they're thriving. But a lot of us, those of us who have done shadow work or looked at our dark sides, seem to be thriving a whole hell of a lot better through currently than, and this is November of 2025, by the way. Just in case you're watching this like a year from now. There's people like I'm currently thriving, right? Like obviously there's so much uncertainty. There's a lot of things that like I don't know what's next. I don't know how things are gonna go. I really wish I had a strong masculine partner through all of this who knew how to use a gun. But I don't have that, and I don't know what the future holds. And yeah, I could get an astrologer to look at my chart and tell me all of the details, but some of it I like to leave up to just plain like surprise, he's here. Um, but that being said, like I do think that there's part of this world that will be dystopian, and I also think there's part of this world that will be utopian because I think it's all a choice. And I think that it's all about being in integrity and alignment with oneself and, going where you're guided versus like your egoic choice. I think that some people live in a scarcity and survival mode because they choose it. And I don't think it's a conscious choice. I think it's based on like people are so scared of being judged or being criticized. Unfortunately, I've been through the worst of judgment and criticism from 2015 until 2023 was like the worst stretch of time for me for judgment and criticism. So like now I just don't give a fuck. Um, and a lot of that had to do with how I chose to respond to 2020 and how like the rest of the people in my world chose to respond to 2020. And there were issues before that that came up when I got into spiritual work, Reiki, astrology, that people thought I was a complete nut and therefore chose to leave my life. And that's fine. That's their choice. And for me, I grieved my grief and here I am. So, futuristically speaking, do I think that the world's going to be like technology overridden and all of that? I think that technology is going to play a role. It's kind of inevitable. I think that it's how we choose to interact and engage with technology that makes or breaks how we choose to interpret it. Uh, do I think jobs are already shifting and changing? That's pretty evident by the current times. Um, Clearly, if the federal government, state governments are the main job holders in our society, and those two entities are collapsing, then absolutely. Also, manufacturing is shifting from man manufacturing to robots manufacturing. So obviously, those things are shifting. And so it's going to be up to us to be creative and step into our greatness and our purpose. We are all here for a purpose. We're all here in this time and space for a purpose. Unfortunately, a lot of us are very wounded and very scared of actually stepping into what could be our greatness, but we're so afraid of being judged and criticized. Once again, it comes from doing shadow work and working with supports and coaches who don't let me get away with my own bullshit. So, anyway, so back to the subject at hand. So, in my experience of having loads of friends who are blind and visually impaired, having clients who are blind and visually impaired, the big things I've noticed is water moons, moons in water signs, specifically Cancer and Scorpio. I've also noticed a significant amount of blind and visually impaired people have more than one planet or luminary in Scorpio. I don't think this is any accident. I am a Scorpio rising and a Scorpio moon. I've worked with other clients who have a Scorpio sun, Scorpio moon, Scorpio Mercury, other clients who have a lot of fire but have maybe a Cancerian moon. And it does depend on like where that moon is in their chart. If it's like the one Cancer moon is in the 12th house. So obviously there's a lot of subconscious feeling of emotion, nurturing the subconscious, all of those sorts of things. But Scorpio is a multi-sensory. Think about it. Scorpio, most people think of like sexuality, sensuality, but let's just say sensuality for sake of conversation because sensuality is multisensory, right? It's the intimate touches, the intimate conversations, the intimate sounds, all of those sorts of things. So it's not really surprising to me that a lot of my blind and visually impaired clients have a lot of placements in Scorpio. But to be honest, though, Scorpio is not just about sexuality or sensuality. It's also just about that multisensory because Scorpio is the depth water, like conductive, is what I think of when I think of Scorpio. And it's psychic, therefore, like your clairs are probably like hyperactive, especially if you are limited in one sense or the other, as in the five senses. So if you're limited in your vision, you probably have like extra like and note too that like these aren't senses that you're born with necessarily. You have to hone and practice them, just like with any like skill skill set, you have to practice working with your five senses or your four senses, right? And so just because you have a vision loss doesn't mean that you have good hearing or good tactile or good smelling or whatever, right? Also, Scorpios tend to have either excessively rigid boundaries or let everything and anything permeate their energetic field, which is the field that's like around you. It's like 6 feet around you, but it can be permeated both in the physical and in the energetic or metaphysical. So let's just say you are a home person, but you talk to people on the phone or you're on one of those like community chat lines. You're letting all of that energy get to you. So if you even are on a virtual situation, that you're taking in that energy. And if you're extra compassionate or empathetic to everyone, that's great, fine, wonderful, but you're allowing that to permeate your own energetic sphere. Same with like if you have a lot of extra sounds that you hear, um, if you have a lot of things that you smell, like you can smell all of the smells, and therefore, what are your skill sets there is what I would invite you to think about. If you're the one who can hear when something falls on the ground, great, because nobody saw that happen and you're the one who heard it happen. So that has come in handy for me multiple times in life. Tactile. You can navigate a dark room. A lot of sighted people can't do that. They need a flashlight, they need a candle, they need, light to navigate, but you don't because you're blind. So, there's so many things that come with being blind. So, Cancer moons also have the empathic energy field situation, but they can also sense things with regards to like nurturing, nourishment. I know one person who is a Cancer sun, and I believe a moon in Aquarius, and they can like sense things with various relationships. So they can just like meet someone and they can just know that they're going through something with relationships. Um, and so my whole thing in pointing all this out is like, first of all, you are gifted in ways that are difficult to understand only because they are not literal gifts. It's not like you're gifted with a craft that you can make you can't you don't you're not one that's going to just make things to give to the world. However, you can be a service provider. You can be a provider of some type, right? It's not a surprise to me that I know of a couple of other blind astrologers. Um, Excuse me. I know of a couple other blind folks who are into Reiki. And I know I have known plenty of blind people who've gotten into massage therapy over the years, because that, it's those extra senses that we have that when we practice them and when we hone them, that they can be very useful in a service type of way. So you can take that however, I mean, this whole conversation can go like in a couple, I'm a Scorpio moon, Scorpio rising. So, you can go totally sexual on this, but I would invite you to like think about it in a more practical way. Um, anyway, so overall, I would say that the things that I have noticed is they usually have a strong water presence. Even if they are a super fiery chart, they are still someone who has some water placement that's more dominant than any of their fire energy. Now, this isn't a conclusive study. If you would like me to do a more conclusive study, collab with me and let's do that because I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to look at a bunch of charts and figure out what the thread is. But I can tell you that part of the thread is using your other senses as conduits of wisdom for the rest of the world, even if it's for the people immediately around you. Um, I was going to say something else. It's also like learning how to practice using them so that you don't have to hide them. Um, I think that a lot of people hide, especially like Scorpio placements, they try to hide their psychic potential, their psychic abilities, because, we're Christians and Christians aren't psychic. Only God knows what's next. I'm not saying that you're going to predict or create a what's the word? What is the word? What is the word? Prophecy. That's the word. I'm not saying that you're going to hammer out a prophecy. I'm saying that like you can know things in your environment, but if you're hiding from what your senses are taking in, you're not going to get what you need to get from the environment. Also, hiding your senses means that you don't practice using an invisible cloak of protection, and there's that too. So, and a lot of this is metaphysical. Actually, all of this is metaphysical. And some people can't deal with metaphysical because they need the literal thing. Um, and so it's really a matter of allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to experience your five senses or your four, and then learning how to interpret them so that you can hone them in and harness them to use them for the greater good. So, it would be really interesting if I knew some historical names and public figures who may have been blind psychics. Um, or who were blind and had like a psychic capability that they actually utilized. That would be kind of cool to learn about. So, but yeah, so that's kind of just my rough introduction to studying blind people in astrology. I think that's all I have for that. It's a very short video, but maybe I needed a short video for me to just ramble on about blindness and astrology. I don't know that there's a common thread that like speaks to limited vision. There are things that can come up with certain Saturn placements, but I'm still learning about that. Um, I do think that there is something about being visually impaired, being blind, and being a visionary, and being able to, you know, like be like create things. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a physical creation, but you can be the one who senses certain things. It's a matter of harnessing and honing in on what those things are. And in some ways, it's learning how to nurture yourself, and in other ways, it's learning how to support the people that which you are around. And so just be aware that, like I said, many charts that I have looked at, there is a significant water placement. I'm not saying this is conclusive. It's not. It's just my experience of staring at a bunch of charts. So anyway, if you want me to do more formal investigation, or if you are another astrologer who would love to collab with me to learn more about blind and visually impaired and how it shows up in charts, I'm open to that because I want to dive deeper in. Also, this is also a plug if you are somebody who is in the spiritual community, mystic, and you do utilize your other senses, and you would like to collab, the Blind Mystics podcast, I do want to bring that back on this channel. I just want to try and do more of a broader group of people. I have a couple people I'm going to reach out to in the coming months to try and get some interviews and collabs set up. So I have at least three currently on my list of people to contact. But life is lifing right now, so that's why things have not been getting done on YouTube. But I will be back eventually. So give me some time. I'm working on some stuff, working on a lot of things personally, professionally, and then once things settle down, which probably won't happen anytime soon, but I'll keep trying. But I do want to bring the blind mystics back and talk to more people who are blind and visually impaired who do this work, and see what happens with that. So anyway, that's what I got. Thanks for joining me. Take care.